is context? What is context? Context is the situation. That's context. It's the situation that applies at that particular moment. It's the situation that guides the conversation. It's the situation that guides the action. And the reason why you're going to be good medical professionals, the reason why you're going to be good doctors, the reason why you're going to be good engineers, the reason why you're going to be good researchers, the reason why you're going to be good managers and leaders is because you will understand the situation that's guiding the action. You're going to be able to step back from what is going on and look at the context. And language arts is all about context. This is a language arts class. English, learning English, grammar, speaking and listening, reading, all those classes are language arts classes. And then in language arts, there's nothing that is definitive. And what I mean by definitive, there's nothing that is strictly the rule and strictly the case. Everything in language arts is about context. In fact, everything about everything is a context, even in the sciences. This is why, in order to have innovation in the sciences, you must have what? The arts. Anyone who is devoid of the arts will never have innovation or have slow innovation. If you look throughout history, when did innovation take full steam? Innovation took full steam shortly after the middle of the Dark Ages, and we went into a time of Renaissance. And what does Renaissance mean? Renaissance brought in universal thinking. Rebirth. Rebirth out of what? The Dark Ages. Rebirth taking on a new perspective of what? The arts in the sciences. So you had Renaissance men. Leonardo da Vinci, Raphael, Donatello, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. They were Renaissance men. And then all the men up to today, we have lost that idea. That's why I think we're moving back towards the Dark Ages now. Because we lost the Renaissance man concept. Because about 50 years ago, we went back into the scientific method where everything had to be objective. And we started to slowly disregard the arts. This is why we're losing our humanity. But the Renaissance concept was the idea that a person had to not only master the sciences, not only master things that are definitive, 1 + 1 is 2, but also has to master those things that are subjective. And we talked about subjectivity in maybe week 8 or week 9. You have to master both. You have to be a student of the objective and the subjective. And the reason why learning languages are very important, and if you notice, a lot of the Renaissance men, the early Renaissance men, they were bilingual, trilingual. Why? They understood the importance of language as it relates to understanding, as it relates to higher order thinking. And the arts enhances that. And language arts, it's all about context. Language arts is not definitive. The problem that you have when you learn a language not in a native and not in the in a native, the native country of that language, or the culture where that language is native, or where you're not in the native language speaking, not in the native speaking language. You know what I'm trying to say. Can't say it. When you learn a language outside a country, the country in which you're trying to speak, or the native, why can't I say this? When you're trying to learn a language in a country that doesn't speak that language, let's say it that way. When you're trying to learn a language in a country that doesn't speak that language, it becomes difficult. Why? Number one, you're not hearing the language all the time, but mainly the approach people take when they're trying to teach you the language. Because a lot of people want to teach a language, and what's the first thing they put in your face? Grammar. And what is grammar? Grammar is a set of rules that defines what a language is, and it creates a framework for language that all people must follow. And that's not what really grammar is. And yes, you must have a language cannot be a language without grammar. You can't have a language without a set of rules. However, these are not necessarily rules. They're kind of suggestions. Why? Because language is the language arts. It's an art. It's an art. We can survive without English. We can survive without Arabic. We can survive without Spanish. What will we do? We would just create another language. You take a Saudi baby, you take him to Canada, he's not going to speak Arabic unless he's in a community where they speak Arabic in Canada. You did not learn Arabic through grammar. You learn Arabic by listening to your mommy and daddy and your aunties and your brothers and sisters speak. If you never would have went to a school a day in your life, you still would have learned Arabic by virtue of hearing it. Because God is great, and he gave us the pre-wiring to learn languages. So he put that structure already in your head. It's called the Universal Grammar Theory by Noam Chomsky. And Chomsky has proven the Universal Grammar Theory to be true. So when you learn in a language, please be sure and understand that it is not a formula. It's not a mathematical formula. You know, the formulas you use to figure out how to convert a fraction into a decimal, or how to find the radius of a circle. You know, remember those formulas? How to find the circumference. That's not language arts. Why? Because in language arts, pi is what? What is pi? What is pi? 3 point what? 3.14 right? But 3.14, right? Pi is always going to be 3.14. It was 3.14 million years ago. You follow me? And it's going to be 3.14 when there's no more Earth. You're going to still have, pi is still going to be 3.14 forever. Definitive. However, subject-verb agreement is going to look totally different 50 years from now. And it will. Why? Because languages change. The way we speak now is not the way we spoke 100 years ago. It's not the vocabulary we use. Words can come in and out of fashion. Rules change based on what? History. Based on what? Circumstance. And what determines history? Context. One of the biggest problems we have with university students is teaching you guys critical thinking, teaching you guys higher order thinking, like how to infer, how to analyze, evaluate. Why? Why do we have problems doing this? Number one, you guys don't engage in it much in your K to 12 experience. That's number one. So you haven't practiced those higher order thinking skills. And then two, when someone does ask you it, the approach is a very scientific approach. And higher order thinking is not a scientific activity, actually. It's actually an activity of the arts. It's an activity of being able to look at context and draw connections, look at situations and draw connections. So when you talk about higher order thinking, it needs some fluidity. It can't be rigid like science. Pi is 3.14. You cannot get understanding with something that's rigid. You need the flexibility. And that's what the arts brings. The arts brings flexibility. So when you're going to learn a language or you're doing anything that requires context, the sciences is not appropriate alone. You have to always involve the arts, the art of thinking. Why? Because there's always more than one way to solve a problem. Always. Yin and yang.